Imagine living next door to a pair of identical twin brothers. They attend school like everyone else. They play video games, they spend time online, they laugh with friends, and from the outside, they seem completely ordinary. But what if one of those twins was hiding a secret so disturbing that it would shock an entire community? A secret that would ultimately lead investigators to accuse a 13-year-old boy of committing one of the most horrifying crimes imaginable. This is the story of Levi Carte and his twin brother Hunter. A story that raises difficult questions about childhood, violence, and how two brothers raised under the same roof could end up on dramatically different paths. Before we continue, it's important to remember that at the center of this case is a real victim, Sheila Denise Tenpenny, whose life was tragically cut short. This is her story, and it's also the story of the investigation that would leave an entire town searching for answers. Chapter 1: The Twins. To understand this case, we first need to understand the two boys at the center of it. Levi and Hunter Carte were identical twins growing up in Ohio. Physically, they looked nearly impossible to tell apart, but as many parents of twins will tell you, appearances can be deceiving. Because despite sharing the same face, the same home, and many of the same experiences, their personalities appeared very different. Friends and people who later discussed the case often described Hunter as more reserved and easier to get along with. Levi, on the other hand, reportedly developed interests that would later draw the attention of investigators. According to information discussed during the investigation, he spent significant time consuming true crime content and reading about serial killers. At the time, however, nobody could have imagined where those interests would eventually lead. Like countless teenagers around the world, Levi was simply another kid with internet access and curiosity. Or at least that's how it appeared. Chapter 2: The Woman Next Door. Just a short distance away lived Sheila Denise Tenpenny. She was a member of the community who knew many of her neighbors and lived a relatively quiet life. Nothing about that day suggested that she would soon become the victim of a brutal crime. For investigators, one of the most unsettling discoveries would be the possibility that she was targeted because she appeared vulnerable. A person living alone. A person unlikely to be able to defend herself. And according to investigators, someone Levi knew. That detail would make the case even more disturbing, because this wasn't a stranger encountered by chance. This was a neighbor, someone who lived only a short distance away, someone whose life had become intertwined with the Carte families long before the crime occurred. Chapter 3: A Horrific Discovery. When authorities responded to the scene, they quickly realized something wasn't right. What initially appeared confusing soon began to reveal signs of something much darker. Investigators started noticing details that didn't fit together. Evidence that suggested the scene may have been manipulated. Evidence that suggested someone had tried to hide what had really happened. As forensic specialists processed the home, the picture became increasingly disturbing. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't natural. Someone had deliberately taken a life. And as detectives worked backward through the evidence, one name began appearing again and again. Levi Carte, a 13-year-old boy, an age so young that many people struggle to believe it. Yet the evidence continued to point in the same direction. Chapter 4: The Investigation Closes In. One of the biggest mistakes criminals make is believing they can outsmart forensic science. Investigators don't need witnesses. They don't need confessions. Sometimes all they need is a single mistake, a single fiber, a single trace of DNA, a single inconsistency in a story. As detectives examined the evidence, they allegedly discovered details connecting Levi directly to the crime scene. The more they uncovered, the harder it became to explain those connections away. And while the investigation intensified, another person found himself pulled into the center of the storm. Hunter, Levi's identical twin brother.
Chapter 5. Hunter. Imagine learning that your twin brother has become the focus of a murder investigation. Not a rumor, not gossip. A real investigation involving forensic evidence and detectives. That's the position Hunter found himself in. Investigators interviewed him extensively, attempting to understand what he knew and when he knew it. Did he notice anything unusual? Did Levi ever say anything? Did he suspect something had happened? These interviews would later become a major source of fascination for people following the case. Not because Hunter was convicted of involvement, he wasn't, but because the conversations offered a rare glimpse into the relationship between two brothers whose lives had suddenly been changed forever. Chapter 6. The Shocking Digital Trail. In modern investigations, detectives don't just search homes, they search phones, computers, internet histories, digital footprints. And according to reports surrounding the case, Levi's online activity became an important piece of the investigation. Authorities examined his interests, searches, and the content he consumed. Prosecutors would later argue that these discoveries suggested planning rather than a spontaneous act. If true, it transformed the case from something impulsive into something far more chilling. Because planning requires thought, planning requires intention. And planning raises a disturbing question. How long had this been building? The story of Levi and Hunter Carte remains one of the most unsettling juvenile crime cases in recent memory. Not simply because of the allegations, not simply because of the victim, but because it forces us to confront a difficult reality. Two children can grow up in the same home, share the same experiences, even share the same DNA, and yet their lives can move in completely different directions. For Sheila Tenpenny's family, no investigation can undo what happened. For the community, the questions may never completely disappear. And for everyone who has followed this case, one mystery remains. How could a 13-year-old boy allegedly commit a crime that shocked even experienced investigators?